All right. We are ready. We are ready. Ready to go. Ready to go. Today, though, is going to be interesting. Because my daughter is homesick. And that means chaos. Well, not really chaos, but I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to go after her and help her. Hey, Dr. Sheldon, how's it going? How are you? Hey, Zillion. Like I said, my daughter is home sick, so I'm gonna be possibly running after her during the warm-up. We'll see. She has currently one of her favorite movies on. We'll see how well she'll stay in one place. Hopefully it's good. You will most definitely hear her. Probably see her. She will come here probably. So we'll see. You'll definitely be hearing her. That's one of her things. Hey, Eric boy, how's it going? And for those who don't know, my daughter has autism. So she does something called stimming, which is stimulating, which is repeating words to calm herself down. So she'll probably hear that. Hey Buka, how's it going? Without further ado, let's start a timer. And let's play with the proportions. I increased the width of the canvas just so I don't feel constrained by the canvas, because a lot of times if you work too close to the edge of the canvas, you try to make it work within the frame. So what I usually do is I extend the canvas far beyond, so I don't feel the urge to contain the design within the frame. It's a very subtle thing, but a lot of people do it. And easy thing to get lost in. That's why it's so important to very important to try to liberate yourself from that. And it's not easy to do, to catch yourself doing these things that limit your mind, but the more you're aware of them, the easier it is to circumvene them. Hey, Voodoo Breakfast, how's it going? So my daughter, she's here home sick, and her current favorite movie is Emoji. I don't know what she likes in it, but I think she likes the different emotional states. Hey, Captain Boss, how's it going? Voodoo Breakfast. What I was talking about, for example, one of the things that limit me is the confines of the canvas. That's why I started talking about it, because one of the first things I did was expand the canvas so that it was more free space around. Like now, in this instance, the Moth Queen the staff is at the edge of the canvas, and you would naturally try to design something within that confinement. But if we would do this, you know, it indicates, you know, what should we design up here, so it fits. So that's one thing that you gotta keep in mind, that simple little thing like that can limit your ways of designing. And that realizing that it is a potential confinement in the way you think, and be aware of it, can liberate yourself just by knowing the fact that could be a hindrance, right? So you probably seen me do it a lot of times on streams, is just quickly expand the canvas while painting to create more negative space like that, so the image reads better, but also recognizing that I'm limiting myself within the frame. And that's obviously, that's not something you want to do, right? You want to be liberated, you want to be free, and not have arbitrary limitations to your creative process. So that's why, you know, like the whole knowledge is freedom thing is very important. That, you know, the more you are aware, the easier it is to deal with. And if you're oblivious to the fact that you don't know what the problem is, and a lot of times there's not one thing, you know, like the canvas thing I'm talking about now doesn't necessarily need to be the one true and only thing that keeps you back, but the fact that you know it now can help you be aware of it, right? So the next time you can almost like go through a checklist. Is it the canvas? Am I limiting myself? Maybe even limiting yourself in color or shapes, or the limitation, the edges of the canvas. You know, you never know really. Hey, Miss Monster. But the fact that maybe you are aware of it, or being aware of your own lack of understanding, let's say, of anatomy, like, oh, I don't really understand anatomy, especially shoulders. The fact that you are aware of that when you're drawing shoulders will make you try harder to draw more accurate shoulders. So it's the same with anything really, like it's all about knowledge and you being aware of your limitation, and by the fact alone that you are aware of it, you know, makes you better at it. Hey Kirill, how's it going? I think you can definitely point that out yourself. But to kind of to explain that, the whole spotting your own mistake things, and going back to a subject I discussed before about the current culture in our artist society, or community rather, is that we don't really give feedback. And one of the best things about constructing your train of thoughts into coherent, precise point, and attempting to help another artist by putting your thoughts about their art into writing in a way, in a constructive way, where you discuss the things that you don't understand or don't like, and construct it in a way where you suggest changes. And the fact that a lot of people don't do that, regardless of skill level, to each other, you don't practice that observational skill. So if you never practice looking at someone else's work and trying to define what is working and what is not working, how are you supposed to be able to do that to yourself? Or maybe you spend a lot of time criticizing your own art in a constructive way, rather than just hating on it. 1 second now. ASMR. I'm back. So yeah, to go back to the point, I mean, how can you analyze your own work and look for mistakes if you never practice that skill set? And one great way of doing that is giving constructive feedback of your thoughts on a piece to others. And one thing I want to point out is that at my Discord, you're free to give feedback to anyone, even without asking. People not asking for feedback. Because I'm a strong believer that helps you, regardless of the comment. But, I mean, feedback being, oh, you're shit, is not constructive feedback, right? It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the person writing that comment. It doesn't help the person reading that comment, right? But if you write feedback about stating your opinion about the piece of art, saying, oh, I don't like the way you drew the hands because of X, Y, and Z. The person who drew the hands can then read the comment and go, oh yeah, I can see your point, I'll correct it, or yeah, I see your point, I don't agree. But if you never hear that feedback about your art, like statistics, right? So one off person makes a comment about your hands, and you don't hear it again until next the 10th painting from now, right? And someone says, oh, that's weird hands. But if it's a reoccurring feedback, like, oh, you should practice your hands better, or the hands are not good enough, you know, if more people than one random occasionally mentions your hands, statistically, is your stylistic choice of how you're drawing hands justified to yourself and output-wise good enough for you to ignore that feedback? Or should you take into consideration, okay, maybe I need to work on my hands? If a lot of people don't see what I see when I do my hands, maybe it's a tiny tweak you need to do in your understanding of hands, or tiny tweak in your stylization of the hands, or you need to go back to school and learn how to draw hands, you know. book a lemon. But how else are you supposed to give feedback? Of course, you need to say, from my point of view of how you see the art, what if the artist in question is not trying to do realism? Because in realism, that's the only frame of reference you can say. It's not realistic enough. But you can't say, I don't like this painting because it's not realistic texture enough. That's the only way you can judge by reality, right? Otherwise, everything else is biased subjectively, right? So how your own taste is purely how you construct feedback. I don't like the way you drew hands because XYZ. There's not like, according to the realism reference pack, you have clearly not recreated reality close enough to pass. You know, that's also one way of saying it. But not everyone is trying realism. So it's always going to be based on you as an observer, because first of all, you don't necessarily know what the artist itself, the original creator intended, right? Their thoughts about, I'm going to draw this because of that. Or they have managed to communicate that correctly, and you see it, and you can enjoy for what the artist has intended you to experience. But then again, like, take any like fine art masters, all of them create different emotional and intellectual responses to their art. That's why people love going and look at someone creating art, right? So that's, you know, it's always based on your feelings. Hey Ardi, how's it going? Miss Monster, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's technical problems in a painting that you can always address, saying, oh, I mean, you can always assume, right? You should assume. Assuming you want to go for realistic light, your render is incorrect, right? Or I assume you're going for realistic anatomy, and in that case, your legs are messed up, you know, or one eye is higher than the other because I assume you don't want an extremely asymmetrical head, right? That's, you don't need to write assumptions constantly in feedback, but that's like the general approach you have with technical feedback, right? I assume you haven't added some special spice to the way light interacts in your world or in your painting. So if my assumption is correct, then you've painted light incorrectly. But if you have to guard every opinion with that assumption statement, you're gonna be, you know, spend half a day writing feedback. So that's, for me, that's kind of understood, right, by default. When you say, I think that you could do better anatomy. But then everything beyond a technical flaw is subjective. I mean, everything is subjective, but it's additionally subjective. And you could say with this moth queen, you know, technically, you know, I can have better light source, but I don't like the way I've designed the antennas. You know, those are two different statements, but both could be right. Miss Mosta. Yeah. And also, I think it's important, and a completely different thing that a lot of people don't discuss in when it comes to getting feedback and giving feedback, is that you grow skin on your nose. And by that, I mean you're strengthening your own opinion, but you're also creating an atmosphere where it potentially is humbling to you and your ego to hear feedback and hear where your flaws is. And if you agree to any sort of feedback, you know, you're realizing, oh, I'm maybe not that good at hands, in this example, right? Maybe that is your flaw. And if you can do that to yourself as well, you can look at it, you can try to be as subjective as you can to your own piece. You can rationalize your decision making. Is this really where I wanted to take it? My intent was to create a painting that would evoke the feeling of sadness. And then you can go, did I succeed? Do I feel sadness when I look at this painting? If no, what's missing, or what's too much of, or and you try to be not be blind to your own piece by observing it through a mirror, or walking away further away, or looking away and then looking back and go, oh, I'm way off, or the light is bad, or my design isn't readable enough in big, medium, and small shapes. And you could easily do that, but if you never practice that skill set, you're just like just full speed running down the road, just no thinking, no care, no nothing, no looking around where you are. You're just like, yeah. I mean, you'll get there, but the question is, like, how, at what state are you going to be at the end? Atsugi. Yeah, that was a bit worded harshly. Yeah, but it's important to practice this skill set, right? I got some question from Leo Sartorelli. My struggle most in anatomy is I've always been stylized in my approach to the human figure, because I like to add whatever I do is I plus it. You know, so if I make a angry person, I make it like angry. If I make it a tall, I make it tall, right? By default, that's kind of in my expression. I like to overstate the thing I'm trying to do. So now, like, I wanted her to have a fat body, so you could definitely have done it more subtle. But for me, I like a bigger silhouette, or a bigger read, or a bigger statement in what I'm trying to do. So one of the biggest things that I'm bad at when it comes to anatomy is extremely realistic, accurate proportions. I tend to always exaggerate, and that's something I am aware of, and something I always try to check myself on. But a lot of times I make that mistake of plussing and something. I mean, it works great for what I'm doing when it comes to character designs for games and movies and monster designs. It's great, you know, that I have the ability to plus to plus something, but then doing a realistic work for games or illustrations, that's something I constantly need to remind myself of. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. Those fingers look mighty long. Let's tone those down. Or the size of a bicep, or this like musculature, or you know. So that's something I know my flaw in anatomy is that I tend to go plus, you know, plus it. But in other terms of anatomy, of how anatomy works, where how joints look, how like muscle direction, and how they're overlaying each other, and all these things, I'm pretty good at them. I'm pretty knowledgeable, but not like fine art anatomy master knowledgeable. Like I can't draw everything perfectly, but I have a pretty decent understanding of how everything works, to the point where I can bastardize it. Right, I can make adjustments based on reality, or function, based on my understanding of anatomy. Right. The plus is better. This one's the in this instance. Yeah. Sulfur. I don't do life drawing at all, really. I did it for a period of time when there was availability for me in my vicinity, but no. I would say when if I measure the or count the amount of times I've spent life drawing, it's minuscule. But I have been looking at a lot of anatomy on internet. Not at a certain website, mind you, but just general like studying in the body. Also, I am a kind of person that observes a lot, so I do look at anatomy by default. So if I see some beautiful light on someone, I'll like look at it, and you know. Ricky, yeah. No, no. I mean, you. What clothes are you changing into? No, no. I'm looking at the folds. I'm not looking at you. Carry on trying clothes on in the store, please. I'm observing the way they hang on your body. It's okay. I'm an artist. It's okay. I'm an artist. This is extremely. I would go to jail if I would be doing that, clearly. No, but I think I took one 2-day workshop with an understudy of Glenn Vilpel. I had life drawing once a week for half a year, I think, at uni. I used to go as a 14 to 16, 17-year-old to once every second week in a art museum in Stockholm. They had life drawing. I went when I had time, like just went there alone. No one else, that I knew. Just me there, trying to get good, but far from the amount in theory I should. Miss Mosley, have you seen those? Yeah, those are great. But if you have the ability to go to a real one, that's obviously significantly better, for the reason of you lose stereoscopic viewing, right? Because we have two eyes. And when we do this, for example, doing life drawing, we see the volume, and through a lens of a camera, we see a two-dimensional representation of depth, and we don't fully understand it. So you have to practice with your own eyes on a real body, and that's the only way you can understand. Because spatial understanding, we're quite good as a human. Buka, no, I didn't. I mean, I wanted, when I was little, like, I wanted to be an art teacher, because I've always been interested in drawing. And then later on, when it was time to go to high school or college, I chose college with a higher amount of art classes, like higher hours of art, right? They were like with art as a focus rather, but there was really no. I mean, it was more art classes, but there wasn't specifically like fine art school. It was just, oh, you have one more lesson of art a week, or and additional things like photography. You can play with photography or play with clay, and it was a little bit more in depth than average school. Everyone had art in school, but this was just plus. But I kind of tried to tell my mother that I wanted to have it as a career, and she was like, "No, that's stupid." She was like, "You will never earn money on it." And I told her, like, I think I can. She was like, "Nah, that's not plausible." Then I kind of went into web design. I started doing web designs and things like that, doing graphics for websites. But I was miserable doing it. It was no fun. And then I went to do industrial water filters and pumps for them. So I didn't even do art for 7 years after the high school, until I was 24, and then I said, screw this. I'll make art a career. And then here I am. Hey, Cosmoverse. Next month you'll get that powerful number 6. Hey, Gria, how's it going? Buka, yeah. Alright. Time is up. Let's raid Artgerm. He's online. Miss Monster, yeah, the idea is a moth queen, and my idea of moths in this universe is that they're more like baby dragons, fragile baby dragons, and she has slots into her body like a beehive, where they all, like an invert nipple, they connect into her, right? So they grow out of her until they're fully grown and they can fly, but they also fly back to nurse or to sleep. So the idea is that she's dynamic, right? And she has her body, and she's gonna glow in the belly, because of moths are attracted to light. Invis graphics, I will, but not today because my daughter is home ill, so I won't have the ability to, but I will. Inverted nipples. Alright, let's raid Artgerm. He's a cool guy. Some interesting traditional art today. thanks everyone for joining in. Thanks you for listening to my rant. As per usual, I'll do the outro and then I'll switch us over to the raid. Good night. Have a great day. See you tomorrow morning. You are the best. Bye.